they had an opportunity to take a bombastic over-the-top character, which is what Lara Croft was. She was like a femme fatale, ultra-wealthy, super self-centered murderer who would, like, fight demigods and djinns and dragons and stuff to, like, you know, get artifacts, whatever. It was never, like, a realistic, you know, whatever. I mean, it was very over the top. And then when they do the reboot, they do the standard gritty reboot thing where now she's constantly covered in grime. The story is about her being, like, tortured constantly because apparently what people really want to see from Lara Croft is, like, her being a baby, being, like, I don't know, like, mauled and abused into hardening up. Like, having bad things happen to a character isn't the same as character development. She looks like she's from The Last of Us. She does, doesn't she? But The Last of Us is gritty and realistic. And the Lara Croft games were about a Tyrannosaurus Rex living in a cave under the Great Wall of China is an enemy you can fight in the first Tomb Raider game. That's not a joke. That's a real thing that you can do. It's an extra enemy that you can fight by going down a hidden path. And then they were like, well, how do we... And they did this for a lot of stuff, the gritty, realistic reboots. But I think what they did with Lara Croft here was especially sinister, because to me, it just carries the implication that they thought the only way they could make her appropriate and not sexist would be for them to massively turn down the titty knob. And I don't agree. Have you seen discourse on Twitter before where teachers, it's usually like black women teachers, because there's also an element of racism here, get sent home for inappropriate clothing when they're wearing like head to toe outfits. And the inappropriate clothing that they're wearing just happens to contour to their very large breasts. You've probably seen drama like that. And it's like, wear something appropriate. It's like, well, can they leave their tits at home? That is sexist. And often racist, because there's like a dynamic there. And I feel like this also is, you know? If your argument was they shouldn't change the character because they don't have to be realistic as a video game, I get that, but I think it's a bit dumb to say it's sexist to shrink her tits, that boy brain of you. Oh, okay, all right, Vermin, all right, fine, sure, all right, we'll do this then. You know, you with your grand knowledge of the Tomb Raider series, it's not, they didn't shrink her tits, they definitely shrunk her tits. It's not just like, oh, they updated her character design. It's that Lara Croft, like, was the center of video game discourse on sexualization for so long. She was like the centerpiece of a literally like decades-long conversation on women's bodies in games. And I feel like there are really only two directions that you can go in, right? Either you find a way to present a woman with big tits in a way that's agreeable and interesting and artistically valid and not sexist, or you give up and you're like, okay, fine, she has normal tits now. And that, to me, is the issue, I guess. In the context of all the discourse, I didn't want them to do a realistic reboot anyway, but it was like an open subject to begin with. I just feel like there are a lot of negative implications. And keep in mind, they did a lot of like weird infantilization of her in this remake as well. It wasn't just that they changed her body type or whatever. They also like, it's like, oh yeah, she's younger, she's dumber, she's got a much more naive personality. Now she has like other people in her group that she looks up to and depends on. I think they gave her a mentor character. It just, I don't know. I feel like it's very cynical at the very least. The death scenes had weird vibes. In the first game, I'm pretty sure there's literally like a button prompt to not get raped or killed or something. Like there's a bunch of natives on the island that's like pulling her to, and it looks like they're gonna rape her. And then if you fail the prompt, it turns out they just bludgeon her to death. But it definitely looks and feels like it's a sexual assault kind of thing. I think all these things are related. I guess, okay. How about this? If they had kept her as a femme fatale who was always cracking one-liners and coldly murdering people, and kept her looking like this, but, you know, not 5 polygons or whatever, do you think there would have been a prolonged scene where she fell, broke her leg, screamed in agony about it, crawled and limped along for 5 minutes through sewage, and then a bunch of natives, like, looked like they were about to rape her? Or do you think all of that was just like male writers thinking, how do we make a female character complex, you know? I don't know if anyone, I certainly don't think women who like Lara Croft would have been like, oh, you know what she needs? She needs all that crap that I just described. There's a bad trend of female character development through insane amounts of trauma, even in supposedly feminist media. Yeah, it's like a recurring problem, dude. I don't know. It's really weird. I don't have anything against the concept of characters suffering, but there's definitely like a, Because you can tell, can't you? The writers are like, ooh, you don't think we're going to put this beautiful woman through this much suffering, do you? And they keep doing it, you know, like a shock value thing. Every time a woman gets injured in media, or not every time, I'm overstating the case there, but often, like, when women get injured, it's this way more like gratuitous. It's pornography. It's the same thing they do with women's bodies, where men are often in states of undress in media, and it's just shown. But if women are in states of undress, the camera luridly zooms in and gives you like the look over and stuff. And likewise, when a guy has their bone broken or is suffering or whatever, it's like, ah, man, that sucks. But if a woman is, in a lot of cases, the sort of framing of the game or the movie or whatever, like, really fucking wants you to look at that and jerk off to it. You know, it's fucking weird. But once you start noticing this, you notice it everywhere. Like, all the time. Dude, if there's anything that women love when they're playing video games, reboots of femme fatale characters who are always in charge, it's this. You know? There's so much of this shit. Isn't this a prequel? Isn't she supposed to be inexperienced? That's like the lazy justification. Could you imagine if they pulled this shit with Bayonetta? Oh yeah, does anyone want to play a Bayonetta prequel where she looks like a regular normal person and doesn't at all look like Bayonetta, and also she acts differently and has no confidence, and also she has like a male mentor who like teaches her everything, and also like in 90% of the game she could be killed and like sort of brutally like choked or stabbed to death by random guy? Oh, nobody wants that. Oh, it would be kind of weird to do that in with a like sexy femme fatale character who's very overpowered in the original media. That would be kind of weird, maybe sexist. Are you just against the concept of changing the tone of a series? Okay, no, please, come on, be charitable to what I'm saying here. I'm not against changing the tone necessarily, though considering the tone change they did for the remake of Tomb Raider was, let's rip off Uncharted and do it worse. Yeah, I will criticize that tone change. But in this case, it is the, I think, sexist adjacency between let's strip this woman of her personality, which they completely did, you know, disempower her massively, fill the game with weird, like, Guro porn tier bullshit of like her lurid deaths, which they definitely did. And then also will make her serious by scoping her tits down. Like, I think that's very sexist, you know? I think that there's a set of associations and biases and preconceptions that go into doing all those things at once. It's not necessarily that they're inconsistent. It's more like they're just bad. And also, there might just be something sexist about the way realistic games approached making realistic games. The whole change of her design just reinforces the idea that games are only for boys and must compensate the male gaze. That's the feeling that I get. It's not like the remake did super well with women, if I remember correctly. That shit's weird. Like, all the fucking, like, weird, like, yeah, again, like, empowered femme fatale character, but also if you fuck up this cutscene button prompt, this older man will pin you to a wall by your wrists and, like, choke you to death. Really? Like, I don't know, man. Like, rape is realistic. How would you guys feel if that was the consequence of fucking up in, like, every game with a female protagonist? Like, rape happens pretty often, dude. I don't know. Let's do a Beyond Good and Evil remake. And actually, when the demons, like, when you lose all your health or whatever, you actually get, like, raped to death. Like, because we're doing a realistic reboot. Is it realism we're doing here, or are we bringing something else to the table? Considering the fact that they were trying to ape off of Uncharted, and Uncharted isn't realistic, doesn't it seem kind of odd that they would have, like, taken those directions in those ways? What elements of realism are we looking for? Well, to have her be taken seriously, her tits have to be like a third the size they used to be. And also, when Lara Croft fucks up, she has to scream and moan in pain for hours, and, you know, they'll rape her to death. What elements of magic are we willing to keep? Well, everything else, actually. The giant zombie horde of immortal, like, demigods that she fights at the end of the first game with, like, an artifact that she got from a tomb. We'll keep shit like that, dude, you know? But she needs to be choked to death by older men. They couldn't even make Lara Croft physically strong enough to fight off one single guy, you know? Fuck, dude. Like, that's weird, man. She was a badass in the OG. Yeah, no kidding. I just know for a fact that at some point during the production of this game, I know this for an absolute fact, dude, because I'm so smart. My brain is so huge, okay? I know that for an absolute fact, they had a conversation. Look at this shit, dude. What the fuck? It's so dark, by the way. At some point, they had a conversation. They were like, yeah, there's no way Lara Croft could physically overpower one of these guys. They're a man. I know they said that. I know they said that. I can feel it deep in my bones and my heart. I can feel it. That Lara Croft, who was backflipping and killing T-Rexes with dual fucking Glocks, they were like, nah, see, this is a big guy, so like he'd choke her to death, you know? I agree, she went from a strong, morally questionable badass to a feminized, weak, petite stereotype. Yeah, they didn't keep her character at all, so it's not like there was even a, it's not like it was even like an iteration of how she was already designed or developed or whatever. They just made her a different person, a much more sexist person. Does anyone look... Real question, does anyone looking at this get the feeling that this game is particularly sexist in the actual act of playing it? Like, I know the cover art, she's got big knockers, but I feel like in the actual moment-to-moment gameplay, nothing about this actually... Like, I have played... This game was the center of decades of sexualization discourse. But in truth, actually playing it, it just plays like itself, you know? She just has big tits, and they market her big tits. It's ridiculous that she's wearing this outfit for this occupation. Yes. It is silly. It definitely is. And I think that if they had put some effort into intelligently developing on this, they could have done a lot with it, you know? They could have kept her having a sexualized design, but made the game bombastic to compensate. In fairness, this game is pretty bombastic in itself. Or they could have like dialed it down in a way that was respectful. But in the remake, they just boiled away her personality and cut her tits in half, you know? And I do blame the liberals. I do. Oh, that's the T-Rex. By the way, first game, that's the T-Rex you fight. In this realistic... Guys, we're going to do a remake of the classic video game Tomb Raider, you know? We need to have her lose in hand-to-hand combat against one man in a cutscene while she's whimpering like a scared girl because of realism. Make her tits 1/3 the size, you know, everything's realistic now, you know, and by that we mean disempowering. It has to be disempowering. Would they do that for a man? The closest thing that I can think of, honestly, with them doing that is, sincerely, I mean this sincerely, the God of War games, the more recent ones in which they did not de-emphasize, what's the term? De-stylize? They brought the realism levels up, but they did it purposefully, was the thing. They did that in an artistic and purposeful way. They didn't do it because it was like, oh, we need to like kowtow to the censors and make God of War less violent or whatever. They just kind of, they intelligently adjusted the tone of the game.